tender, let me reveal all that living can be. Snug like a child in the shelter of my shoulder, then as I hold you, you may start to love me.
Yeah, and then what we actually,
neutral or
neutral. Well, yeah, because we'll use the hand brakes to brake the parking brake to break things loose. What's really important when you're working on Citroens is having a set of genuine metric adjustable wrenches. It is important that they be metric. You can't use British, you can't use SAE. They have to be metric adjustable. Otherwise you'll screw the nuts up. Let's lift it up and see if we can find a place where we can put the stand on the frame without punching a hole in your floor.
On a whole different substrate too. You really didn't count much for this, did they?
Well, you see Mr. Takakjian, there is a factory mandrel that slides into here. It's got a pad on it. It sticks out about that far. It allows you to put a jack underneath it, lift it up, and then put the floor jack back here. Whereas with this thing, you don't got the room to do it because you're lifting right on the lift point. Same problem here. That's fine right there. Take it up one notch.
You know where this car's been? It's been in an Andy dumpster. That's deplorable. How anybody let their car get in this kind of condition, I don't know.
Well, what we're doing is we're removing the engine on a D Series, post-66 D Series Citroen. This one happens to be an ID19. The basic difference between the models was in engine size, transmission layout, braking, and in the braking system. The ID19s were designed as sort of an entry-level model, and then you had various, you had the ID19 that morphed into what they called the D Special later in its production. And then you had the DS21, which had a larger engine. It had a different brake layout from the standpoint of how the brakes were operated. The basic principle, though, on all the cars are the same. It uses a hydraulic suspension system, of which there are green spheres, they're hydraulic spheres that screw in to this cylinder right here, and it is attached to the suspension via these what are called half axles, which are basically forward leading arms, and they work as a parallelogram. And as the wheel goes up and down like this unit rotates in big massive bearings in a housing that's hidden by this dust shield. And at the end of it, it's attached to a rod, and the rod goes up and down and pushes on a piston that rides inside these cylinders. And screwed into the top of the cylinders is a green suspension sphere. This is a suspension sphere. This one happens to be a model with a replaceable shock absorber in it. The shock absorber is composed of two precisely ground nuts that have a very slight curvature on the mating surface. There is a shock body that is composed of a bunch of very precise drillings, and then sandwiched between the nut and the body are metal shims that control the flow of fluid. Inside the sphere, this one happens to be a rebuildable type, there's a rubber diaphragm, and on top of it is nitrogen gas under pressure, and the bottom is then filled with fluid from the suspension system, and as the fluid pressure builds up, it pushes the piston down, which then raises the car in the air. The beauty of this system is that this nitrogen spring or the nitrogen gas has about 20 times the shock absorbency of a standard steel spring shock absorber system. And the system is designed with about 7.5 inches of wheel travel, over which there's less than a 50-pound change on the patch pressure on the tire where it meets the road. The beauty of the system is that when you're going over undulations and over ripples in the road, the body of the car rides virtually flat. It doesn't pitch, it doesn't roll, it doesn't bounce. To this day, I mean, this system was designed back in the late 40s, and to this day there's still no suspension system made on any car that's superior to it. These are just locating screws for the drive shaft. Now comes the fun part. The nuts securing the tripod unit to the output shaft of the transmission can be sometimes hard to get off, especially if they haven't been removed in a while. Now it's a good idea before you even start to work on them to hit them with a little penetrating oil. Let's see, Andy. Yeah, they're 17s. If you're lucky, you can typically get 4 of the 6 without having to rotate anything. As an aside, I would recommend one of these to anybody who works on cars. You can get them from Orchard Hardware or most of the home improvement stores. They're not that expensive. It's a battery-operated 1/4-inch driver. And once you have one, you will find yourself using it for just about the whole disassembly of a car. This stud wasn't attached properly. Came off, stud and nut came off together.
Don't want to look pretty. Ready to make hamburgers.
I have gloves, Andrew. The trick to removing these nuts easily is to use the emergency brake in the car so that you immobilize the drive axle on both sides. If the emergency brake in the car is not working properly, then you either have to put the car in gear if it's a manual to prevent it from, and then immobilize one side so you can do them together, or you can use a steel bar here at the ground to prevent rotation, but it makes the job a lot harder. Now rotate it to move them up to the top. Okay. I just released the parking brake, and we're rotating the last 2 securing bolts to an upward position so we can easily get to them. Have you got yours up?
Yeah.
The emergency brake on the D's does not work off a cable to the rear brake unit. On the D, and if you can get in here, kind of hard to see it. This is the main hydraulic caliper for the front discs. Behind it, there's a separate caliper that operates the handbrake. So the handbrake operates on the front disc, but it's done with a separate mechanically operated caliper that's operated by a cable. Mm-hmm. And in the case of the IDs, it's operated by a hand-operated lever inside the cabin compartment. On the DS's, it's operated by a foot-operated lever.
Done deal?
Yeah. That's a done deal. The thing that is really handy to have are extensions, wobble extensions, that allow you to have some degrees of freedom on the end of a socket. It makes life a lot easier than having solid ones. You can pick them up from basically any of the auto stores in both quarter, half-inch, and 3/8 inch drives or extensions. But it allows you to have a lot easier alignment on the bolts. What we're going to do now is disconnect the support bands for the hydraulic tank so we can move it out of the way. Actually, should get a... Oh, that's interesting. Oh, geez, you know what that is? That's a bloody star drive.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you. This is a star drive.
Oh God.
Well, we're disconnecting the suction tube to the pump, to the main hydraulic pump from the tank. But because it's full of fluid, no matter how careful you are, you will lose a bit. You're not going to pull it off.
I might send that pump home with you for paint.
Why? You can paint it.
Well, you've got the color with the
No, I don't.
spheres.
Here, it's done. No, that's okay. Don't worry about it. It's done. It's drained back in there now.
Okay.
Wearing out. I'm gonna have to get a new one. Okay. What we're doing now is disconnecting the control arms from the steering rack to the steering pivot, the steering rack pivot. Do you have brake cleaner? Brake cleaner? Yeah. What we're doing is taking off the clamp bolt for the steering column. Why is this? Alright, now comes the fun part.